Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was a shinobi in the Naruto world with one for all as a Kekkei Genkai. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in Konohagakure's Ninja Academy training ground was thick with the scent of freshly turned earth, sweat, and the electric tang of nascent chakra. For most of the students gathered, this was the smell of ambition. For Izuku Midoriya, it was the smell of his own inadequacy. Alright, settle down! Iruka Yumino's voice cut through the nervous chatter of the preteens. His scar, a pale line across the bridge of his nose, seemed to deepen when he was trying to wrangle his class. Today, we're going back to basics. The foundation of a shinobi's arsenal, a technique that can save your life, create diversions, or gather intelligence. The clone jutsu. A collective groan went through the class. I know, we've done this before, Iruka said, a hint of exasperation in his tone. But the graduation exams are approaching, and a perfect, stable clone is a mandatory requirement. Some of you, his eyes flickered almost imperceptibly towards Izuku, are still struggling. Let's see some progress. One at a time. Uchiha, you're up. Sasuke Uchiha stepped forward with an air of bored aristocracy. He didn't bother with dramatics. He flicked his hands into the ram, snake, and tiger seals with practiced, fluid ease. Clone jutsu, poof. Beside him, a perfect, solid replica appeared. It mirrored his scowl, his folded arms, his entire aura of disdainful perfection. It didn't flicker, it didn't waver. It was flawless. Excellent, Sasuke. As expected, Iruka noted, though a small part of him wished the boy would show an ounce of enthusiasm. Alright, Inuzuka, yeah! Leave it to me! Kiba Inuzuka shouted, his canine partner Akamaru yipping from atop his head. He slammed his hands together. Poof! His clone appeared, grinning just as widely as he was, though it seemed a bit more translucent around the edges than Sasuke's. Passable, Kiba. Work on your chakra consistency, Iruka critiqued. Next, Hyuga. Hinata Hyuga shuffled forward, her pale lavender eyes fixed on her own feet. Her fingers trembled as she formed the seals. See clone. Jutsu. A soft poof and a clone appeared. It was solid enough, but it mirrored her own nervous posture, looking as though it might apologize for its own existence and dissipate. One by one, the students went. Sakura Haruno produced 3 perfect clones, showing off her excellent chakra control. Shino Aburame's clone was unnervingly still, just like him. Choji Akimichi's was munching on a spectral bag of chips. Even Naruto Uzumaki, the class pariah and prankster, managed to produce a pale, sickly-looking clone that quickly fell onto its face and vanished. It was a failure, but it had, for a moment, been a corporeal thing. Then, it was Izuku's turn. Midoriya, the name hung in the air. A wave of snickers rippled through the onlookers. Izuku felt a familiar heat creep up his neck, a flush of shame that was as much a part of his daily routine as breathing. He took a deep breath, clutching the worn, leather-bound notebook in his left hand like a holy text. Okay, Izuku, you can do this, he thought, his mind racing. Iruka-sensei said to visualize the chakra flowing from the core, splitting evenly, and then manifesting. I practiced the feeling all night, just like in my notes. Volume 12, page 34, subsection on E-rank Jutsu Fundamentals. He set his jaw, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. He brought his hands up, his fingers folding into the seals. Ram. Snake. Tiger. The movements were perfect. He'd spent hundreds of hours practicing them until they were pure muscle memory. He could do them in his sleep. Now came the hard part. He reached inside himself for his chakra. It was there, a tiny, flickering ember where others had a roaring furnace. He tried to coax it, to pull it through the tenketsu, the chakra pathways that crisscrossed his body. It felt like trying to suck a thick milkshake through a pinhole-sized straw. The energy resisted, sputtered. It was weak, diluted, and pathologically disobedient. Come on, he muttered under his breath, his face contorting with effort. He could feel a trickle of it, a pathetic stream, reaching his hands. He focused all his willpower, all his desperate hope, into that single point. Clone jutsu! Pfft. The sound was less of a poof and more of a sad, airy sigh. For a split second, a wisp of pale blue energy shimmered in the air beside him. It had the vague shape of a head and shoulders, but it was translucent, pathetic, and shivering like a ghost in a high wind. Then, with a faint pop, it dissolved into nothingness. The snickers erupted into open laughter. Did you see that? It looked like Grandpa's dying breath. One student cackled. Seriously? He's been here for years and he still can't do a simple clone. Kiba was the loudest. Ha! What a Deku! Good for nothing. You're more useless than a puppet with its strings cut. Even Naruto's was better than that. The name stung more than any physical blow could. Deku. It was a clever, cruel play on his name. The kanji for Izuku could be read as Deku, but in common slang, a Deku was a wooden puppet, a blockhead, someone who couldn't achieve anything. It had stuck to him like a curse. Iruka-sensei sighed, the sound heavy with a mixture of pity and finality. Midoriya, we've talked about this. Your chakra coils, they're just too underdeveloped. It's a miracle you can mold any at all. Perhaps you should focus on your academic studies. A career as a shinobi might not. He trailed off, unable to bring himself to finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. Izuku's shoulders slumped. He bowed his head, his green curls falling over his eyes to hide the stinging tears that threatened to spill. Why yes, sensei. I understand. I'll try harder. He retreated to the edge of the training field as the class moved on to shuriken practice. He didn't hear Iruka's next instructions. The world had narrowed to the familiar sting of failure and the rough texture of his notebook cover. He flipped it open. His pen, a simple thing with a replaceable ink cartridge, danced across the page. Subject, Clone Jutsu Analysis of Failure, Attempt 734. Hand seals, perfect execution. No lag or error in form. Chakra molding, severe difficulty. Sensation of blockage in primary pathways. Chakra feels thin. Watery. Lacks the necessary density for physical manifestation. Observation. Sasuke Uchiha's chakra output is effortless and dense. Minimal waste. Likely due to high-quality Uchiha chakra and natural talent. Hinata Hyuga's is timid but stable, suggesting excellent control hampered by confidence. Kiba Inuzuka's is wild and powerful but inconsistent. Hypothesis. My issue is not control or knowledge, but raw material. The fundamental quality of my chakra is insufficient. Is it possible to strengthen the coils themselves through physical exercise? Or perhaps specific dietary regimens could increase chakra potency? Research needed on medical ninjutsu texts regarding chakra generation and pathway development. He sketched a diagram of the human chakra network, highlighting the points where he felt the blockage most acutely. His drawings were meticulous, filled with annotations and speculative theories. This was his jutsu. This was his only weapon. When his body failed him, his mind took over. He couldn't create a clone, but he could deconstruct the technique of everyone who could. He had 13 notebooks just like this one, filled to the brim with detailed analyses of every jutsu, taijutsu style, and fighting quirk he had ever witnessed. It was his obsession, his crutch, his desperate, clinging hope. He was so absorbed in his notes that he didn't see the paper shuriken flutter down and land beside him. He looked up to see Sasuke Uchiha walking away, not even bothering to glance back. It wasn't an act of malice. It was worse. It was an act of utter dismissal. Izuku wasn't even worth acknowledging as a rival. He spent the rest of the day in a familiar haze, observing, analyzing, and writing, a silent ghost on the periphery of a world he desperately wanted to join. When the final bell rang, he packed his scrolls and his precious notebook into his worn backpack and began the long walk home. The village of Kanahigakure was a symphony of life. The scent of pork broth from Ichiraku ramen wafted through the air, mingling with the metallic smell from the Yamanaka flower shop and the sharp tang of steel being forged at a blacksmith's. Shinobi in green flak vests leaped from rooftop to rooftop, blurs of motion against the setting sun. To any other child, it was just home. To Izuku, it was a constant, painful reminder of everything he wasn't. He saw a genin team report to the mission assignment desk, laughing and bickering. He saw a chunin practicing his katas in a small dojo. He saw heroes. He didn't go straight home. His feet, acting on their own accord, carried him down a familiar path, up a long flight of stone steps carved into the mountainside. He emerged at the base of the most sacred monument in the village, the Hokage Rock. Four colossal faces stared out over the village, granite sentinels of a legacy of strength and sacrifice. Hashirama, Tobirama, Hiruzen. But Izuku's eyes were always drawn to the fourth, Minato Namikaze. The yellow flash. To Izuku, the fourth Hokage was the pinnacle of what a hero should be. He wasn't born into a legendary clan like the Uchiha or the Hyuga, with a powerful Kekkei Genkai handed to him at birth. He was a genius, yes, a prodigy of unparalleled skill. But his legend was built on his own ingenuity, his impossible speed, and his unshakable will to protect everyone. And he did it all with a smile. Every surviving picture of him showed a man radiating warmth and confidence. A man who made you believe everything would be okay, just by being there. How did you do it? Izuku whispered to the unfeeling stone, his voice small against the vastness of the monument. They say you were a once-in-a-generation talent. But you still had to work for it, didn't you? You weren't just given everything. He slumped down onto a bench, pulling out his notebook again. He turned to a special section at the back, one filled not with analysis, but with sketches and stories he'd pieced together about the fourth. He had drawings of the flying Raijin kunai, theoretical diagrams of how the Rasengan worked without hand seals, and a detailed account of the battle at the Canopy Bridge he transcribed from the library archives. He was so lost in his hero worship that he almost missed the shift in the atmosphere. It started with a distant shout, then a scream. It was the sound of a festival turning into a panic. Izuku's head snapped up. Down in the village, near the central marketplace, smoke was beginning to rise. His heart hammered against his ribs. A villain attack? Here? In the middle of the village? He scrambled to the edge of the lookout, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. He could see figures moving quickly. The flashes of jutsu. The green vests of Konoha shinobi converging on the area. His fear was a cold, paralyzing thing, but underneath it, something else stirred. A frantic, desperate curiosity. The analytical part of his brain, the part that lived in his notebooks, was already taking over. Who is it? What are their abilities? How are the Konohanin responding? He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't. He was a civilian in all but name. He was weak, powerless. A Deku. But the pull was too strong. He slung his backpack on and scrambled down the steps, his short legs pumping as he ran towards the danger, not away from it. The marketplace was chaos. Stalls were overturned, their wares, fruits, ninja tools, colorful fabrics, scattered across the cobblestones like the aftermath of a hurricane. Civilians were screaming and running, a tide of panicked humanity that Izuku had to fight his way through. In the center of the square, several chunin were engaging the source of the disturbance. It was a single man, but he was causing a disproportionate amount of trouble. He was lean and wiry, wearing the tattered remains of a kiri headband, the village symbol slashed through. His movements were erratic, and the air around him shimmered with a strange heat haze. Stand back. It's Kajuro the Shimmer. One of the chunin shouted to his comrades. His heat haze clones are illusions. Find the real one, the rogue ninja, Kajuro, cackled. Illusions? They feel real enough when they're slitting your throat. He performed a rapid sequence of hand seals, and half a dozen shimmering, distorted copies of himself materialized, darting through the crowd and sowing more confusion. Izuku, hiding behind a large stack of crates, had his notebook out. His hand was shaking so badly that his writing was almost illegible, but he forced himself to focus. Intruder analysis, Kajuro the Shimmer, affiliation missing nin from Kirigakure, jutsu style, genjutsu/ninjutsu hybrid. Creates clones from superheated air. They seem to lack physical substance but can cause disorientation and likely carry a genjutsu effect on contact. Main weakness, must be a visual distortion. Byakugan would be highly effective. How to find the real one without it? Observation, the real one's shadow is slightly darker. The heat shimmer is also more pronounced around the original body. He's favoring his left leg, Previous injury? The Konoha shinobi were competent. They were working to contain him, protecting civilians and trying to pinpoint the true target. But Kajiro was slippery, using the panicked crowd as his shield. Then Izuku saw him, Konohamaru Sarutobi, the honorable grandson of the third Hokage. He wasn't running. He was standing his ground, a kunai held in a trembling hand, a look of terrified bravado on his face. I'm the grandson of the Hokage. I'm not afraid of you, you jerk, he yelled, his voice cracking. One of Kajiro's shimmer clones flickered and appeared right in front of the boy. Konohamaru yelped and threw his kunai, which passed harmlessly through the illusion. The real Kajiro, seeing an opportunity for a high-value hostage, disengaged from the Chunin and flickered across the square, his speed startling. He appeared behind Konohamaru, a wicked-looking blade appearing in his hand. A perfect little shield, the rogue hissed, grabbing the boy by the collar of his shirt. The nearby Chunin were too far, tangled up with the remaining illusions. Time seemed to warp, stretching and slowing down. Izuku saw it all with horrifying clarity. Konohamaru's wide, terrified eyes, the glint of the sun on the rogue's blade, the triumphant sneer on Kajiro's face. The shinobi who were just a second too late, and in that frozen moment, Izuku's mind was silent. The notebooks, the analysis, the fear, it all vanished. All that was left was a single, deafening thought that echoed the images of the fourth Hokage he so admired. He's in trouble. Someone has to save him. His legs moved before he could think. It was a clumsy, pathetic sprint. He wasn't a shinobi. He didn't have enhanced speed or a flicker technique. He was just a boy, running on pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Get away from him! He screamed, his voice raw. Kajiro turned his head, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of this scrawny, green-haired child charging at him. It was so unexpected, so absurd, that he hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all Izuku needed. He didn't have a jutsu. He didn't have a weapon. All he had was his heavy, oversized backpack. With a desperate roar, he swung it off his shoulders and hurled it with all his might at the rogue ninja. The bag wasn't aimed to injure. It was aimed to distract. It flew through the air, and Kajiro, reacting on instinct, raised an arm to block it. The bag hit his arm with a heavy thud. The weight of 13 notebooks was significant, and the straps tangled around his wrist. At the same moment, the cheap ink bottle Izuku kept in the side pocket, its cap loosened from the jostling, flew out and shattered against the cobblestones near the rogue's feet, splashing dark ink everywhere. But the real genius of the attack was unintentional. The main clasp of the backpack burst open on impact. 13 thick, hard-bound notebooks spilled out, scattering across the ground around Kajiro's feet. He stumbled backward, surprised, trying to untangle his arm from the strap and stepping on the slick, ink-covered surface of a notebook cover. His injured left leg, the one Izuku had noted, gave way. With a curse, Kajiro lost his balance and his grip on Konohamaru. He fell backward onto the hard stone, his head cracking against the ground with a sickening thud. He was dazed, disoriented, his plan completely and utterly ruined by a flying school bag. Izuku stood there, panting, his chest heaving. His entire body trembled with the aftermath of his terror. He had done it. It was stupid, reckless, and suicidal, but he had done it. He had saved someone. The moment of triumph lasted for 2 seconds. Kajiro's eyes, blazing with fury, snapped open and locked onto him. The daze was gone, replaced by pure, murderous rage. You little brat, he snarled, pushing himself up. The Chunin were closing in now, but they were still too far. Kajiro was right there. I'm going to gut you, he lunged. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, a pathetic whimper escaping his lips. He was going to die. He was going to die for a moment of foolish, impossible heroism. This was the price for a Deku trying to be a hero. A shadow fell over him. The air suddenly became thick, heavy, charged with an impossible pressure. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. It's fine now. The voice was a deep, resonant baritone that vibrated in Izuku's very bones. It was a voice of absolute, unshakable confidence. A voice that promised salvation. Why? Because I am here. Izuku opened his eyes. Standing between him and Kajiro was a man. No, not a man. A giant. He was immense, easily over 7 feet tall, with a physique that seemed carved from granite and a smile that was blindingly bright. Golden hair, styled into 2 prominent tufts that resembled rabbit ears, framed a face that was the very definition of heroic. He wore simple shinobi pants and sandals, but his upper body was bare, revealing a tapestry of corded muscle. He looked like a legend sprung to life. Kajiro skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with a terror that dwarfed anything Izuku had felt. Why you? No, it can't be. You're supposed to be retired, or dead. Konoha's golden fist, the golden giant's smile didn't waver. He took 1 step forward, the ground seeming to tremble. He didn't make a hand sign. He didn't mold any visible chakra. He simply cocked back his right fist. You've caused enough trouble for one day, villain, he boomed. He punched the air. He didn't even make contact. His fist stopped a full foot away from Kajiro's face. But the sound. It wasn't a crack or a snap. It was a deafening boom, a thunderclap that shattered the very air. A shockwave of pure, kinetic force erupted from his fist. It was visible, a distortion in the space itself. It slammed into Kajiro, not cutting him, not burning him, but simply hitting him with the force of a battering ram. The rogue ninja's eyes rolled back into his head. He was launched backward like a stone from a catapult, flying a dozen meters through the air before crashing into the brick wall of a storefront. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious, a cloud of brick dust billowing around him. The shockwave continued, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris that momentarily obscured the entire square. The shimmer clones vanished. The chaos died. Silence descended, broken only by the settling of dust and the stunned gasps of the onlookers. From the edge of the square, a gaunt, skeletal man watched the scene unfold, a wisp of pride in his hollowed eyes. He had been on his way to buy dango when the commotion started. He had seen the whole thing, the boy's foolishness, the boy's analysis, the boy's heart. Toshinori Yagi had seen something he thought was long gone from the world. When the dust began to clear, Izuku stared awestruck at the spot where the golden hero had stood. But he was gone. In his place was a scarecrow. A man so thin he looked like a gust of wind might carry him away stood there, hunched over and coughing violently into his fist. He was tall, but his clothes hung off his skeletal frame. His face was gaunt, with sharp cheekbones and deeply sunken eyes that held a frantic, worried energy. Steam hissed off his body, as if he were rapidly deflating. A thin trickle of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, staining his chin. Izuku's mind, the one that had been silent just moments before, roared back to life, trying to process the impossible. Transformation jutsu? No, there was no poof of smoke, no chakra signature I could feel. And the reversion, it was like he was sick. That power, it wasn't ninjutsu. It wasn't genjutsu. It was taijutsu, but on a level that shouldn't be possible. The sheer force from wind pressure alone, it defies physics. Unless, he stared at the skeletal man, who was now frantically looking around as if he'd lost something. The man's eyes met his. Izuku had seen that face before. In history books. Younger, healthier, but unmistakably him. The hair was the same, just deflated. The eyes held the same fierce light, just dimmed by pain. Why you're... Izuku stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Toshinori Yagi. They called you Konoha's golden fist during the Third War. A taijutsu master said to rival the Third Reikage in power, but you retired. An injury. The man, Toshinori, flinched. He wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand, trying and failing to look nonchalant. Ah, you're mistaken, kid. I'm just a passerby. That hero? No idea who he was. Probably just some flashy jonin. His acting was terrible. Izuku wasn't buying it. He had seen it. The sudden appearance, the impossible power, and then this weakened form. It was a secret. A terrible, wonderful secret. The Chunin had secured Kajiro, and were calming the civilians. Konohamaru was being fussed over by his ANBU guard, who had appeared out of nowhere. No one was paying attention to the skinny man and the stunned boy in the now quiet corner of the square. Izuku took a shaky step forward. then another. He stood before this walking ghost of a legend, the man who had just saved his life with a power beyond comprehension. All his frustrations, his despair, his one tiny, burning flicker of hope, it all coalesced into a single, desperate question. The question that had defined his entire existence. Tears welled in his eyes, hot and unstoppable. They streamed down his freckled cheeks. He didn't try to wipe them away. "I saw you," Izuku choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw what you did. And I saw you change. That power, it's not normal, is it?" Tashinori's weary eyes widened slightly. He opened his mouth to deny it again, but Izuku pressed on, his words tumbling out in a torrent of long-suppressed anguish. "I don't have a Kekkei Genkai. My chakra coils are weak. Everyone, my teachers, my classmates, they all say I can't do it. They say I should give up. Iruka-sensei wants me to become a scholar. The other kids call me Deku, useless, because no matter how hard I study, no matter how much I train my body, I can't even make a single, proper clone." He gestured wildly at his scattered notebooks, the physical proof of his obsessive, fruitless efforts. "But I want to be a hero. More than anything. I want to be like the fourth Hokage. I want to save people with a smile, and make them feel safe. But maybe they're right. Maybe a quirkless, chakraless nobody can't ever stand on the same field as people like Sasuke or Neji." He looked up, his tear-filled, emerald-green eyes boring into Tashinori's soul. He saw the flicker of something in those sunken blue depths, surprise, recognition, and something akin to profound sadness. Izuku clenched his fists, his entire body trembling. He bowed his head low, the ultimate plea of a shattered soul. "Even if I don't have chakra, even if I'm just a Deku, can I become a hero?" he asked, his voice cracking on the final word. "Can someone like me ever hope to be like you?" The question hung in the air between them, more powerful than any jutsu. It was the cry of a dreamer on the verge of despair, aimed at the one man who might just understand. Tashinori Yagi stood silent, the steam still faintly rising from his emaciated form. He looked at the crying boy before him, a boy with no power, no lineage, no special gift, who had just charged a dangerous missing nin with nothing but a backpack and a hero's spirit. He saw the notebooks filled with brilliant analysis. He saw the heart of a true protector. He saw himself, so many years ago, a boy with a righteous spirit but no power to back it up. He saw the perfect vessel. The setting sun cast long shadows across the square, bathing the scene in a soft, orange light. Tashinori's expression shifted from one of pained weariness to something new. It was a look of solemn, earth-shattering decision. The future of a legacy, a power passed down through generations, was about to be decided in this dusty, forgotten corner of the marketplace. The silence that followed Izuku Midoriya's desperate, soul-bearing question was a tangible thing. It was heavier than the Hokage rock that loomed over them, more profound than the hushed shock still lingering in the marketplace air. It was a silence filled with the weight of generations, of a secret kept through wars and bloodshed, now laid at the feet of a crying, chakra-less boy. Tashinori Yagi did not answer immediately. His sunken blue eyes, sharp and intelligent despite the skeletal frame they occupied, roamed over Izuku. He saw the trembling shoulders, the fists clenched so tight the knuckles were white, the tears carving clean paths through the grime on the boy's freckled cheeks. He saw the scattered notebooks, a testament to a mind that worked tirelessly to compensate for a body that could not. In that moment, Tashinori didn't just see Izuku Midoriya. He saw a mirror, warped by time and pain, reflecting a piece of his own past. He remembered being a young man, full of righteous fire but possessing no special jutsu, no esteemed lineage, no power to enact the change he so desperately wanted to see in the world. He remembered standing before his own master, Nana Shimura, and asking a question born of the same helpless idealism. He had spent years searching for a worthy successor. Years. Since the battle that had shattered his body and put a strict, merciless timer on his ability to be a hero, he had watched countless shinobi. He'd seen prodigies from great clans, like the Uchiha, their power a birthright they wore with casual arrogance. He'd seen hard-working shinobi who lacked the spark, the unquantifiable core of self-sacrifice that separated a good soldier from a true hero. He'd seen those with immense power but no compassion, and those with compassion but no will. None were right. The vessel had to be more than just strong. It had to be worthy, and then, today, he had watched from the shadows as this boy, this Deku, ran toward danger, not with a plan for victory, not with a powerful jutsu, but with the singular, instinctual drive to save someone else. The top-ranking genin, the most promising chunin, the most seasoned jonin, they all have stories about their moments of heroism. But the truly great ones, the legends, they all share a common thread. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. Toshinori's gaze softened. The long, agonizing search was over. The will of the universe, or perhaps just the lingering will of his master, had placed the perfect candidate right in front of him. "Kid," Toshinori said, his voice a low rasp. He took a step forward and placed a bony, surprisingly gentle hand on Izuku's shoulder. "You're not just looking at me. You're looking through me." At him, he gestured vaguely toward the sky, toward the memory of the golden giant. "Follow me. This is not a conversation for the open street." Without waiting for a reply, Toshinori turned and began walking, his gait unsteady but purposeful. Izuku, stunned into silence by the lack of an immediate rejection, scrambled to gather his precious notebooks, shoving them haphazardly into his tattered backpack before scurrying to catch up. Toshinori led him through a labyrinth of back alleys, away from the main thoroughfares where the ANBU and Medical Corps were now operating. He moved with a quiet familiarity, eventually stopping at the base of a tall, nondescript apartment building. "Up," he said, pointing toward the roof. Izuku looked at the 5 stories of sheer wall. But there's no staircase here." Toshinori let out a dry, wheezing laugh. He grabbed Izuku's backpack strap. "Hold on tight, kid." Before Izuku could protest, Toshinori bent his knees slightly and leaped. The world became a dizzying blur. There was no chakra flare, no build-up. Just a silent, shocking explosion of kinetic energy. They shot upward, the wind tearing at Izuku's hair and clothes. He squeezed his eyes shut, a terrified yelp caught in his throat. A moment later, his feet touched down with a gentle thud on the rooftop. His stomach took another second to arrive. He stumbled, his legs like jelly, and stared at Toshinori, who was now leaning against the rooftop railing, catching his breath. The man was a paradox, a skeletal figure who looked like he could be felled by a strong breeze, yet who possessed a physical strength that defied all logic and the laws of nature as Izuku understood them. The rooftop offered a panoramic view of Konoha. The sun was bleeding across the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange, purple, and red. The Hokage rock stood in stoic silhouette against the dying light. It was beautiful, peaceful, and a world away from the chaos in the marketplace below. "To answer your question," Toshinori began, turning to face him, his expression deadly serious. "What you saw down there, the hero, that was me. It is a form I can no longer hold for long." He didn't wait for Izuku to interject. He lifted the hem of his loose-fitting shirt. Izuku gasped, a sound of pure horror. The man's entire left side, from his pectoral down to his hip, was a nightmare of scarred tissue. It was caved in, a violent, swirling vortex of mutilated flesh that spoke of a wound that should have been instantly fatal. The skin was unnaturally puckered, drawn tight over ribs that were clearly gone, and the entire area was a discolored mess of pale white and angry red scar tissue. It looked as if some monstrous beast had scooped out a part of him, and the wound had tried, and failed, to heal properly over the gaping void. 5 years ago, Toshinori said, his voice devoid of self-pity, as clinical as a medical needs report. "A fight with a villain. He did this to me. Ripped my stomach out, destroyed one of my lungs. The surgeries saved my life, but the after-effects are permanent." He let the shirt fall. "Now I'm running on fumes. I can only be a hero for about 3 hours a day. The rest of the time, I'm this." He gestured to his own emaciated form. A walking skeleton clinging to a past glory. Izuku was speechless. This was the legendary Golden Fist? This broken, pain-racked man? It was an image so far removed from the invincible hero of the stories that his mind struggled to reconcile the two. "That power," Toshinori continued, his gaze intense, "is not a standard ninjutsu. It's not genjutsu. It's not something you're born with, like a Hyuga's Byakugan or an Uchiha's Sharingan. Think of it less as a bloodline and more as a sacred torch. A flame passed from one person to another, through the generations. Its official name is a secret known to only a handful of people, but I call it. He paused, letting the weight of the moment build. One for all. The words seemed to hang in the air, resonating with a power all their own. One for all? Izuku whispered, his analytical mind latching onto the name. One power, for all people, a poetic interpretation, but not quite. Taishinori smiled faintly. It is a Kekkei Genkai, one of the strangest to ever exist. It has two functions. First, it allows the user to stockpile an immense amount of raw power, granting them superhuman strength, speed, and durability. Second, it allows this power, and the Kekkei Genkai itself, to be passed on to another person. He held up one finger. I am the 8th holder of this power. Izuku's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. 8th. So 7 other people before you, correct. Each one cultivated the power, added their own strength to the great stockpiled well, and then passed it on to a worthy successor before their time was up. It is a legacy of power, growing stronger with each generation. The power I wield is not just my own, it is the combined strength of 7 other heroes who came before me. Tashinori's expression darkened. And it was created for one purpose, to combat an ancient evil. A shadow that has haunted the shinobi world for centuries. A man who can steal the Kekkei Genkai of others and make their power his own. He is a collector, a monster who personifies selfishness. He is all for one. The name sent an involuntary shiver down Izuku's spine. All for one. One for all. The names were a declaration of war in themselves. The ultimate egoism versus the ultimate altruism. This man, the one who did this to you, was it him? Izuku asked, his voice barely audible. Tashinori nodded grimly. The battle was won. I put him down, shattered his organization. But the cost was this. He gestured to his injury. I believe he is gone, but the evil he represents, the ideology of power for power's sake, will always try to resurface. One for all must always be there to stand against it. And my time is running out. He took a deep breath, the sound whistling in his damaged lung. He looked directly at Izuku, and the full, crushing weight of his intent finally descended upon the boy. I have been searching for a successor. For someone to inherit this power and this duty. And then, today, I saw you, a boy with no power at all, with nothing to gain and everything to lose, run into danger to save another. You analyzed the situation, you acted, and you were heroic. In that moment you proved you have more of a hero's spirit in your little finger than many jonin have in their entire bodies. Tashinori's voice, which had been weary and pained, now filled with a powerful, resonant conviction. I've decided. You are worthy. Young man, I want to pass my power on to you. Izuku's world tilted on its axis. The air left his lungs. The sounds of the village, the gentle breeze, the feeling of the rooftop beneath his feet, it all faded into a roaring static in his ears. Him? A successor? To this legendary power? To his idol? It was impossible. A dream. A cruel joke. And me? He stammered, pointing a trembling finger at his own chest. But I'm a Deku. I'm chakraless. I'm nobody. Why would you choose me? You could have anyone. You could give this to a prodigy like Sasuke, or someone strong and established. Why me? That's exactly why. Tashinori stated, his voice firm. I just told you. I saw your heart. All the famous heroes have a story from their past where they say their body moved before they could think. That was you today. You, a boy with no hope of victory, were the most heroic person in that entire square. He stepped closer, his sunken eyes blazing with an intensity that reminded Izuku of the Golden Giant. A Kekkei Genkai can be trained. Techniques can be learned. Strength can be built. But a heroic spirit? That is something you either have or you don't. It is the foundation upon which all else is built. You, Izuku Midoriya, have that foundation. Tears began to stream down Izuku's face again, but these were not tears of despair. They were tears of shock, of disbelief, of a lifetime of impossible, foolish hope suddenly, miraculously being validated. "This is your choice," Tashinori said softly. "I will not force this burden on you. It is a dangerous path, one that will attract powerful enemies and push you to your absolute limits, but it is also a path that will allow you to achieve your dream. So I ask you again." He extended a hand, open and waiting. "Do you accept this power, my power, and the legacy that comes with it? Will you become the 9th holder of One for All?" Izuku looked at Tashinori's outstretched hand. He looked at the setting sun, which felt like the dawn of a new life. He thought of his notebooks, of his admiration for the 4th Hokage, of the constant, gnawing pain of being told he was worthless. He thought of the feeling of running to save Konohamaru, that terrifying, exhilarating moment where he was, for the first time, not a spectator but an actor in the story of heroes. He didn't need to think. His body, his soul, had already made the decision. "I'll do it!" he cried, his voice hoarse but unwavering. He wiped his tears away with a fierce swipe of his arm. "I accept!" A wide, genuine smile spread across Tashinori's gaunt face, transforming it. For a moment, the weary skeleton was gone, replaced by the warmth of the hero within. "An excellent reply. I knew I wasn't wrong about you, my boy." He then reached up and, with a quick tug, plucked a single, golden strand of hair from his head. It seemed to shimmer in the twilight. He held it out to Izuku. "Now," Tashinori said, with an almost comical solemnity. "For the transfer to work, you must ingest a part of my DNA. The power is carried within it. So," he presented the single hair to Izuku. "Eat this." Izuku stared. First at the hair. Then at Tashinori's dead serious face. Then back at the hair. "Ha!" was all his overloaded brain could manage. Of all the secret, legendary rituals he could have imagined for the transference of an ultimate Kekkei Genkai, this was not one of them. He had envisioned a complex Fuin jutsu array, a blood pact, a deep meditative ritual under a waterfall. "Not lunch. To inherit my power," Tashinori repeated, a bit impatiently. "You have to swallow some of my DNA. That's how it works, but it's just so different from how I imagined it." Izuku stammered, his mind trying to reconcile the epic scale of the situation with the sheer mundanity of the instruction. Tashinori sighed and reached into a pocket, pulling out a slightly squashed onigiri wrapped in plastic. "I was going to have this for a snack before the commotion started. Here." He unwrapped the rice ball, carefully placed the golden hair upon its sticky surface, and rewrapped a piece of nori over it. "Think of it as a sacred vessel for the sacred torch. Now hurry up. We don't have all night." With a sense of profound, surreal reverence, Izuku took the offered onigiri. He looked at it, then at Tashinori, who gave him an encouraging nod. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and took a bite. He chewed, swallowed, the taste of rice and seaweed mingling with the overwhelming reality of what he was doing. For a moment, nothing happened. He opened his eyes, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Was this all some elaborate prank? And then the world ended. It started as a low hum beneath his skin. Within a second, it became a roar, a tidal wave of energy crashing against the fragile dam of his own existence. A blinding, emerald green light erupted from within him, so bright it bleached the world of all other color. He felt a sensation like 1,000 lightning storms igniting at once in every cell of his body. His chakra coils, already weak and underdeveloped, screamed in protest as a torrent of unimaginable power, thick and ancient and overwhelming, tried to force its way through them. He cried out, falling to his knees. The rooftop, the village, Tashinori, it all dissolved. He was falling through a void, a space of infinite darkness. Around him, 7 great pillars of light erupted, each a different, vibrant color. And within each pillar, a figure stood in silhouette. He couldn't see their faces, but he could feel them, their will, their power, their personalities, all pressing in on him at once. A kind but firm presence, like a stern but loving grandmother. A gruff, no-nonsense aura, crackling with raw energy. A cool, analytical mind, sharp as a razor. 7 distinct consciousnesses, the ghosts in the machine of One for all turned their attention to him, the newcomer, the 9th. It was terrifying and awe-inspiring. He felt their collective power, a vast, bottomless ocean of strength that he had just inherited. Just as quickly as it began, the vision shattered. He was back on the rooftop, gasping for air, his body trembling uncontrollably. His skin was slick with sweat, and a faint green static seemed to crackle around his limbs before fading. What was that? He panted, his heart hammering like a war drum. The echoes of the past, Tashinori said, looking at him with a knowing expression. The vestiges of the previous users. You just felt the moment the connection was truly forged. Welcome, young Midoriya. You are now the bearer of one for all. Izuku pushed himself to his feet, his legs shaky. He felt different. The world seemed sharper, the sounds clearer. But more than that, there was a thrumming, a humming deep within him. It was a wellspring of power so vast it made him feel dizzy. He had gone from being an empty vessel to being filled to the brim with the power of a god. He looked at his hands, turning them over. They looked the same, but they felt like they could punch through the Hokage rock itself. I can feel it, he whispered in awe. It's incredible. A wide, uncontrollable grin spread across his face. After a lifetime of being powerless, of being a Deku, he finally had it. Power. Real, overwhelming power. He could be a hero. He could be just like Tashinori. His eyes fell on a thick metal ventilation pipe running along the edge of the rooftop. The urge was irresistible. He had to try. He had to know. Kid, wait! Tashinori started, seeing the reckless gleam in Izuku's eye, but it was too late. Izuku was already moving, fueled by a lifetime of pent-up desire. He drew back his right arm, focusing on that new, wonderful, intoxicating sensation of power. He felt it surge from the core of his being, a raging river flooding his arm. Green lightning, wild and untamed, crackled around his limb, charring the sleeve of his shirt. He put every ounce of his will, every bit of his dream, into this one single act. He would be like his idol. He screamed the first word that came to mind, a word that felt as natural as breathing. Smash! His fist connected with the metal pipe. The result was apocalyptic. The sound was not a metallic clang, but a deafening kaboom that echoed across the quiet rooftops of Konoha. The thick steel pipe didn't just dent. It exploded. It vaporized into a cloud of shrapnel that shot across the roof like a shotgun blast. The sheer force of the blow sent a shockwave that cracked the concrete beneath his feet and kicked up a whirlwind of dust. For a glorious, triumphant microsecond, Izuku felt like a god. Then the agony hit. It was a pain unlike anything he had ever imagined. A wet, sickening series of cracks echoed up his arm, loud enough to be heard even over the ringing in his ears. He looked down and screamed, a raw, piercing cry of pure agony. His arm was a ruin. The sleeve was gone, blown to tatters. The limb itself was bent at an impossible, horrifying angle. The skin was a violent mural of purple and black, grotesquely swollen. Two of his fingers were clearly dislocated, pointing in directions they shouldn't. But the worst part was his forearm and bicep. They had been ravaged from the inside out. It was a catastrophic spiral fracture. The bone had not just broken, it had shattered under the immense, rebounding force of his own power. He could feel the jagged shards grinding against muscle and nerve. It was as if the power he had tried to unleash had turned back on him, and ripped his arm apart from the inside. He collapsed, cradling the mangled limb, a torrent of hot, agonized tears pouring from his eyes. The triumph was gone, replaced by a white-hot, all-consuming fire that seemed to burn all the way to his soul. Tashinori rushed to his side, his face a mask of grim resignation. He had feared this. You fool! I tried to warn you. Your body isn't ready. It's like trying to fire a cannon from a rowboat. The power is too much for your unprepared vessel. He knelt beside the sobbing boy. Hold still. Tashinori placed his palm flat against Izuku's shoulder, just above the ruined arm. A soft, gentle green light emanated from his hand, the unmistakable signature of basic medical ninjutsu. It wasn't a healing jutsu, not powerful enough to mend the shattered bones, but it was a stabilizing one. The green chakra flowed into Izuku's arm, soothing the screaming nerves, knitting together the worst of the torn muscle fibers to prevent further damage, and encasing the shattered bones in a gentle cage of energy to keep them from moving. The agonizing fire receded to a deep, throbbing ache. It was still excruciating, but it was no longer all-consuming. Izuku's ragged sobs slowly subsided into hitched, painful breaths. He looked at his broken, glowing arm, then up at his new mentor, his face a mask of shame and pain. I'm sorry. I was just so happy, Toshinori sighed, the sound heavy with the weight of experience. He looked at the boy, broken, crying, but alive, and his expression softened. He remembered his own first, disastrous attempts to wield this overwhelming power. He remembered Nana Shimura's stern but caring hands tending to his injuries. He looked Izuku directly in the eye, his gaze unwavering. The pity was gone, replaced by the firm resolve of a master addressing his student. Don't be sorry. This was an important lesson. A painful one, but necessary. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but carrying an incredible weight. He finally gave the boy the words he had been waiting his entire life to hear, the words he had asked for in the marketplace. You can become a hero. The words struck Izuku with more force than the punch had. They were a balm on his shattered spirit, a promise that overshadowed the pain in his shattered arm. This, Toshinori said, gently tapping Izuku's mangled limb, is not a sign of your failure. This is your starting line. From this day forward, your journey to master this power, to make your body worthy of it, begins. He stood up, his tall, skeletal frame silhouetted against the last vestiges of the sunset. The Academy graduation exams are in 10 months. That is our deadline. It will be the most difficult, most grueling 10 months of your life. I will push you until you break, and then I will help you put the pieces back together, stronger than before. We will turn your body from a fragile glass cup that shatters at the first drop into a steel chalice, capable of holding the ocean that is one for all. He offered his hand to Izuku. We will start tomorrow. At dawn. At the old coastal training ground. We will clean it up, and then I will forge you into a hero. Clutching his throbbing, stabilized arm, Izuku looked up at the man who was both a legend and his teacher. Through the pain, through the tears, a fierce, unbreakable resolve began to burn. The path was real, the dream was attainable. And the price was pain. He understood that now. With his good hand, he reached out and took Toshinori's. Yes, sensei, Izuku said, his voice quiet but firm. I'll be there. The 10 months that followed Izuku Midoriya's painful initiation into the world of One for All were a crucible forged in sweat, agony, and an unyielding, desperate hope. Toshinori Yagi was a man of his word. He was a relentless, almost cruel, taskmaster. His training regimen, which he had whimsically dubbed the Konoha Dream Plan, was designed not to teach Izuku how to fight, but simply how to survive wielding his new power. Their training ground was a place most shinobi avoided, Training Ground 44, more grimly known as the Forest of Death. But they didn't train within the forest itself. Toshinori led him to the periphery, a vast, forgotten scrapyard where decades of failed ninja tool prototypes, broken training dummies, and the rusted carcasses of siege weapons from past wars had been left to rot. It was a metal graveyard, a tetanus-laced monument to failure. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, Toshinori had said on that first cold morning, gesturing to the mountain of refuse with a dramatic sweep of his bony arm, is to clean this entire area, every last scrap of junk. Move it all to the disposal site on the other side of the clearing. Izuku had stared at the mountain of metal. It was a task for a whole platoon of shinobi with Earth-style jutsu, not a single, scrawny boy. All of it, Toshinori confirmed, his expression unreadable. This junk represents the weight of your own limitations. Your body is a vessel ill-suited for the power it now contains. We will not pour more water into a cracked cup. We will first forge the cup from iron. This is not about fighting. This is about building. Every piece of rusted metal you lift, every splintered log you carry, will be a brick in the foundation of the hero you want to become. And so it began. The first week was hell. Izuku's muscles screamed with a fire that made his shattered arm feel like a distant memory. He would haul sheets of rusted metal until his hands were raw and bleeding, then spend the evenings poring over medical texts Toshinori provided, learning about muscle hypertrophy, nutrition, and efficient energy consumption. He learned to bind his own wounds, to push through the pain, and to get up the next morning and do it all again. Toshinori was always there. Most days, he was in his skeletal form, offering sharp, insightful critiques from the sidelines, correcting Izuku's posture to prevent injury, and meticulously managing his diet with protein-rich soldier pills and nutrient-dense food scrolls. He was a coach, a nutritionist, and a mentor all in one. Your core, boy! Engage your core! The power of a shinobi comes from the center. You're lifting with your back. You'll be in a wheelchair before you're a genin, he would bark. But sometimes, when Izuku was on the verge of collapse, ready to give up, something miraculous would happen. With a sudden poof of smoke, the skeletal sensei would be gone, and in his place would stand the towering, golden figure of All Might, Konoha's golden fist. He wouldn't help. He would just stand there, a radiant beacon of encouragement, his booming voice echoing across the junkyard. A+ ultra effort, young Midoriya! Push beyond your limits! That is what it means to be a hero! And seeing that smile, hearing that voice, Izuku would find a new well of strength he didn't know he possessed. He would get up, his muscles trembling, and haul another impossible weight, driven by the image of the man he was striving to become. The months blurred into a cycle of agony and progress. The scrawny, soft boy began to disappear. The baby fat on his face melted away, replaced by the lean, sharp lines of burgeoning adolescence. His arms, once thin as twigs, became corded with wiry muscle. A faint latticework of abs appeared on his stomach. Calluses as thick as leather formed on his palms. The junk pile, once a mountain, began to shrink, slowly but surely. He never tried to use one for all. The memory of his shattered arm was a potent deterrent. The power remained a silent, sleeping giant within him, a vast ocean of energy he was forbidden from touching until his body was ready. Finally, on the morning of the Ninja Academy graduation exam, 10 months to the day after his journey began, Izuku stood before the last, most formidable piece of junk, the chassis of an old, armored carriage, half buried in the earth and overgrown with vines. It was the refrigerator from Toshinori's original plan, an immovable object. He wrapped thick ropes around it, dug his heels into the dirt, and pulled. His muscles bunched, his back strained, and for a moment, nothing happened. He grit his teeth, the faces of his tormentors, the mocking shouts of Deku, flashing through his mind. Then came the image of the fourth Hokage, and finally, the radiant smile of All Might. With a primal roar that tore from his throat, he gave one final, titanic heave. There was a groaning, screeching sound of protesting metal and tearing roots. The massive carriage chassis slid from its earthen prison, moving a full meter. Izuku collapsed, panting, his body slick with sweat, but a triumphant grin plastered on his face. He had done it. The junkyard was clean. He turned to see Toshinori standing there, holding out a water flask. He was in his skeletal form, but his smile was as bright as any All Might had ever given. You did it, my boy, he said, his voice thick with pride. Look at you. You are no longer an empty vessel. You are ready. Izuku took the flask, his hand steady. He was stronger, faster, and more resilient than he had ever thought possible. But the final test was yet to come. The atmosphere in the examination room was thick with tension. One by one, students were called into a private room with Irika-sensei and another Chunin proctor. One by one, they emerged, either beaming with a brand new Konoha forehead protector or looking utterly dejected. When Izuku's name was called, a familiar wave of whispers followed him. Deku's up. This'll be quick. Feel kinda bad for him. He's been trying for so long. Don't. He's wasting a spot. He should have quit years ago. Izuku ignored them. He walked into the room, his back straight, his head held high. The change in his physique was not lost on Irika. The boy who had been hunched and frail now carried himself with a quiet confidence. Midoriya, Irika said, his tone professional but with an undercurrent of skepticism. The final test is the clone jutsu. You must produce at least one stable, corporeal clone to pass. You may begin. Izuku took a deep breath. Okay. Don't use one for all. Just your own chakra. The training has strengthened my body, maybe it's strengthened my coils too. Just a little bit. He formed the hand seals, his movements crisp and precise. He reached inside for his chakra. The ember was still small, but it no longer felt thin and watery. There was a hint of substance to it now, a flicker of genuine warmth. He molded it, pushing it through his pathways. It was still like sucking a milkshake through a thin straw, but the straw was no longer pinhole-sized. Clone jutsu! Poof! A clone appeared beside him. It was pale, translucent, and shimmered like a heat haze. It held its form for 3 long seconds, looking around with a confused expression before collapsing into a sad puddle of vapor. It was a failure. But it was the best failure of his life. Iruka stared, genuinely surprised. It almost held. The form was nearly complete. He looked at Izuku's new physique, the determination in his green eyes. He saw a flicker of something he hadn't seen before, potential. An idea, unconventional but fair, formed in his mind. Midoriya, Iruka said, making a split-second decision. Your ninjutsu is still below standard. However, the purpose of this exam is to determine if a student has the fundamental skills to serve Konoha as a genin. There is more to being a shinobi than ninjutsu. He glanced at the other proctor, who nodded in agreement. We will allow you an alternative. You will engage in a short taijutsu spar against Mizuki-sensei here. If you can land a single, decisive blow, or otherwise prove your combat competence, you will pass. A wave of relief and terror washed over Izuku. This was his chance. Mizuki, a chunin with a reputation for a condescending smile, stepped forward. Don't worry, kid. I'll go easy on you. They took their stances. Izuku's mind, his greatest weapon, went into overdrive. Mizuki-sensei prefers long-range combat with oversized shuriken. Taijutsu style is academy standard, focused on efficiency, but lacks creativity. He leads with his right. Predictable. The spar began. Mizuki lunged, aiming a simple punch. Izuku, whose body now felt preternaturally fast, sidestepped with an ease that shocked himself. He'd spent 10 months dodging falling scrap metal and swinging logs. A simple punch felt like it was moving in slow motion. Mizuki's smile tightened. He increased his speed, throwing a series of kicks and punches. Izuku didn't counter. He just dodged, weaved, and retreated, his feet light, his movements economical. His brain was a whirlwind of calculations, analyzing attack vectors, balance shifts, and breathing patterns. He wasn't just dodging, he was learning. All you can do is run, Deku? Mizuki sneered, growing frustrated. There, Izuku thought. His frustration is making him sloppy. He's overextending on his roundhouse kick. Mizuki threw the kick. Izuku ducked under it, the wind whistling over his hair. He was now inside Mizuki's guard, the perfect position. But a punch wouldn't be enough. He needed something decisive. He made a choice. A risk. He channeled the tiniest, most infinitesimal fraction of one for all. Not into his fist. Not for an attack. He channeled it into the soles of his feet. Green lightning, so faint it was almost invisible, flickered around his ankles for a split second. It wasn't a smash. It was just a push. The world lurched. In the blink of an eye, he wasn't just inside Mizuki's guard, he was behind him. The sudden burst of speed was disorienting even to him. Mizuki was still finishing his kick, completely exposed. Izuku didn't strike. He simply reached into his pouch, drew a kunai, and gently pressed the cold, flat side of the blade against the back of Mizuki's neck. Silence. Mizuki froze, the kick unfinished. His eyes were wide with disbelief. He hadn't even seen the boy move. Iruka's jaw was on the floor. He had seen a flicker of something, a blur of motion that defied belief. Decisive enough for you, sensei? Izuku asked, his voice shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He immediately dispelled the minuscule amount of one for all, his legs tingling with a strange, buzzing sensation but, miraculously, not broken. Slowly, Iruka picked up a forehead protector from the table. A wide, proud smile spread across his face, erasing all his earlier doubt. Welcome to the ranks, genin, he said. The next day, Izuku sat in the classroom, the cool metal of the Konoha symbol pressed against his forehead. It was the proudest moment of his life. He had done it. He was a shinobi. Iruka stood at the front, reading from a clipboard. Now for the team assignments. All genin will be placed in 3-person squads, led by a Jonin sensei. I will now announce the new teams. He read through the list. Team 10, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, Ino Yamanaka. A new generation of Ino Shikacho. No surprise there. Team 8, Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, the best tracking team in the village. A correction, Irika suddenly said, peering at a note added to his list. There has been a last-minute adjustment from the Hokage's office. On Team 8, Shino Aburame will be replaced by... He paused, looking just as surprised as everyone else. Izuka Midoriya. A pin could have dropped. Then, the explosion. What? Kiba Inuzuka leaped to his feet, slamming his hands on his desk. Akamaru barked in agreement from his jacket. You're putting him on our team? The chakraless Deku? This is a tracking and combat team. What's he gonna do, take notes while we get killed? This has to be a mistake. Hinata Hyuga, sitting a few rows away, flinched at Kiba's outburst. But her gaze fell on Izuku. She, more than anyone, had felt the shift in him. Her Byakugan, which she often activated subconsciously when nervous, had caught a glimpse of him during the exam. What she saw wasn't the faint, pathetic blue of a normal person. It was chaos, a raging, swirling storm of green energy that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. He wasn't chakraless. He was something else entirely. She felt a strange kinship with him, another person judged to be a failure by their peers. Izuku, for his part, tried to smile reassuringly at his new, furious teammate. Hi Kiba. I'll do my best, I promise. Your best is useless. Kiba shot back, pointing an accusatory finger. I'm an Inuzuka. She's a Hyuga. We're from elite clans. We can't be bogged down by a mutt with no pedigree. That's enough, Kiba. Irika's voice was sharp as steel. The Hokage's decisions are final. Team 8 is Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Izuka Midoriya. Your Jonin sensei will meet you here after lunch. Dismissed. The next few hours were awkward. The trio sat in the empty classroom, a palpable cloud of tension radiating from Kiba. He paced back and forth, muttering under his breath about the injustice of it all. Hinata sat stiffly, poking her fingers together, occasionally stealing a glance at Izuku. Izuku just sat there, his notebook open, already starting a new section titled Team 8, Synergy Analysis and Potential Combination Techniques. Their Jonin sensei was, of course, late. Hours late. Finally, the classroom door slid open. A tall man with a shock of spiky silver hair that defied gravity leaned against the frame. His face was half hidden by his forehead protector pulled down over his left eye and a dark mask covering his nose and mouth. He held an orange book in one hand, and his visible eye curved into a lazy, unconcerned crescent. My first impression of you all, Kakashi Hatake said, his voice bored. Is that you're a complete pain? Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. He vanished in a swirl of leaves. Kiba grumbled, Hinata looked intimidated, and Izuku was vibrating with excitement. Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja, son of the White Fang, said to have mastered over 1,000 jutsu with his Sharingan. This is an incredible opportunity for analysis. On the rooftop, Kakashi laid out his test. Alright, let's get down to it. Before you're officially my team, you have one more test. A survival exercise. He held up 2 small silver bells that jingled musically. Your task is to take these bells from me before the timer runs out at noon, he explained. Those who get a bell will pass and become genin. Those who don't will fail and be sent back to the academy, and since there are only 2 bells, he let the implication hang in the air. One of you is guaranteed to fail. You are to come at me with the intent to kill. Understood? Izuku's mind immediately saw the trap. 2 bells for 3 people. He wants to turn us against each other. But a 3-person squad is the standard. It wouldn't make sense to break us up from the start. The real test, it has to be about something else. Teamwork. He knew telling the others would be useless. Kiba was too proud, and Hinata was too timid. They had to learn the lesson for themselves. The test began. As Kakashi droned on, Kiba and Hinata vanished into the trees, ready to launch their own attacks. Izuku, however, stayed put, a thoughtful look on his face. Aren't you going to hide? Kakashi asked, not looking up from his book, Ika Paradise. It would be pointless. Izuku replied calmly. You're a high-level jonin. If you wanted to find us, you could. My best bet is to understand my opponent first. Kakashi's visible eye flickered up from his book, a spark of interest in its depths. Bold. And stupid. But mostly bold. Suddenly, Kiba burst from the undergrowth. I'm not gonna sit around while this Deku gets all the attention. Akamaru! Let's go! Man-beast clone! He and Akamaru spun into a single, ferocious beast that charged Kakashi. Tunneling Fong! The combined form drilled into the ground, vanishing from sight. A moment later, the earth erupted underneath Kakashi. But the Jonin was gone. He was standing on a tree branch several meters away. A shinobi's first duty is to hide their presence, Kiba. Kakashi chided. Announcing your attack like that is just amateurish. Kiba snarled and charged again. This time, Kakashi didn't even move. He just formed a single hand seal. You're wide open. He disappeared and reappeared behind Kiba. His hands formed into the tiger seal. Konoha secret taijutsu supreme technique. Kiba froze, terrified. A secret supreme technique? Already? 1,000 years of death! Kakashi's fingers, extended and stiff, plunged into Kiba's backside. It wasn't a jutsu. It was an incredibly powerful, incredibly humiliating poke. Kiba shot into the air with a yelp, landing in a nearby stream with a massive splash. One down. Next came Hinata. She was more cautious. Hiding in the dense foliage, she activated her Byakugan. There. In the clearing. But, his chakra flow is off. It's a clone. She spotted the real Kakashi leaning against a tree, still reading his book. She moved silently, a ghost in the trees, circling around for a perfect ambush. As she prepared to strike, the world around her warped. The trees began to melt, and the ground swirled. A genjutsu. When did he? The voice of her father, Hayashi Hyuga, echoed in her mind, cold and disappointed. You are a failure, Hinata. A disgrace to the Hyuga main house. Your sister is 5 years younger and already stronger than you. The illusion was devastatingly effective. It struck at the core of her deepest fears. She cried out and stumbled back, collapsing against the tree, her will to fight completely broken. 2 down, Kakashi sighed. And then there was one. He turned his attention to the spot where Izuku had been. But the boy was gone. Kakashi's eye widened slightly. He hadn't sensed him leave. Izuku was hiding in a dense thicket, his notebook open, his hand flying across the page. Kakashi Hatake Combat Analysis prefers misdirection and psychological warfare over direct confrontation. Used a simple substitution jutsu against Kiba, followed by a non-lethal, but demoralizing, taijutsu strike. Exploited Kiba's reckless nature. Used a low-level but highly personalized genjutsu on Hinata. Exploited her known insecurities. Suggests prior research on his students. Thorough. Conclusion: direct combat is suicide. The bells are a misdirect. The goal is teamwork. Must convince the others. He heard a rustle behind him. He spun around to see Kakashi standing there, his book closed. Found you, Kakashi said. You're good at hiding your presence. Better than the other two. But not good enough. I wasn't trying to hide from you forever, Izuku said, standing his ground. Just long enough to understand. And what have you understood? Kakashi asked, a dangerous edge to his voice. That I can't possibly beat you alone, Izuku admitted. None of us can. A wise conclusion, Kakashi said. So, what will you do now? Give up? Izuku shook his head. No. I'm going to create a team that can. He threw a smoke bomb at the ground. By the time the smoke cleared, he was gone, running through the forest, not away from Kakashi, but towards his defeated teammates. He found Kiba first, wringing out his jacket by the stream, Akamaru whining sympathetically. Get lost, Deku, Kiba growled. I'm not in the mood. He beat you, right? Izuku said, getting straight to the point. Made you look like a fool. Don't you want to wipe that smug, lazy look off his face? Kiba stopped. Izuku had his attention. What are you getting at? He's toying with us, Izuku said. He wants us to fight each other for the bells. But if we work together, we can surprise him. We can at least give him a real fight. You're fast, you're strong. You're the perfect person to be the point of our attack, a diversion he can't ignore. Izuku's appeal to Kiba's pride worked. A slow, wolfish grin spread across the Inuzuka's face. A diversion, huh? I like the sound of that. Next, they found Hinata, still curled up at the base of the tree. She flinched when they approached. Hinata, are you okay? Izuku asked, his voice gentle. I failed, she whispered. Father was right. No, you didn't, Izuku said firmly. Kakashi-sensei cheated. He used a genjutsu tailored to your fears. That's not a fair fight. But you have something none of us have. The Byakugan. You can see through his tricks. You can see his clones, his traps, the real him. You're not just a member of this team, Hinata. Your eyes make you our most valuable asset. We can't do this without you. Hinata looked up, her pale eyes wide. No one had ever called her a valuable asset before. A spark of her own resolve flickered to life. You really think so? I know so, Izuku said with a confident smile he'd borrowed from Tashinori. The plan was simple, formulated in minutes from Izuku's analysis. Hinata would act as their command center, hiding in a high tree and using her Byakugan to give real-time intel. Kiba would launch a full frontal assault, a ferocious, sustained diversion. Izuku, using the opening Kiba created, would be the one to go for the bells. They moved into position. Ready, Hinata? Izuku whispered into the small, makeshift communicator he jury-rigged from spare wire. Ready. Her voice came back, quiet but steady. He's in the clearing. The real one. Still reading his book. Kiba, go! With a battle cry, Kiba and Akamaru burst into the clearing. Hey! Masked freak! Round 2. He wasn't just attacking. He was a whirlwind of claws and fangs, forcing Kakashi to actually put his book away and engage. Kakashi dodged and weaved, a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. Well, some fight in you yet. He's creating a clone. To your left, Kiba! Hinata's voice directed. Kiba spun, intercepting the clone with a powerful slash. Their coordination was impressive. While Kakashi was focused on the relentless Inuzuka, Izuku moved. He circled the clearing, a green blur moving through the shadows, his physically conditioned body faster than any academy student had a right to be. He's distracted, Izuku! Now's your chance! Izuku burst from the trees. Kakashi's head snapped up, his visible eye widening as he saw the second attacker. He was caught between Kiba's assault and Izuku's charge, but Kakashi was a jonin for a reason. With a burst of speed, he disengaged from Kiba and moved to intercept Izuku. Izuku saw him coming. He knew he couldn't win a direct confrontation, so he enacted the final phase of his plan. Instead of going for the bells, he reached into his pouch and hurled 3 kunai. Not at Kakashi, but past him, directly towards where Kiba and Hinata were positioned. Kiba! Hinata! Get down! He screamed. Kakashi's instincts, honed over 100 life-or-death missions, took over. He saw the glint of paper tags on the kunai, paper bombs. He didn't have time to analyze them. His students were in danger. The tests, the bells, it all became secondary. In a flicker of movement, he abandoned his defense and appeared in front of his students, ready to take the blast himself. It was the opening Izuku needed. With Kakashi's back turned, he launched himself forward, his hand outstretched, his fingers brushing against the cool metal of the bells. Burring, the alarm clock on the stump rang, signaling noon. Time was up. Izuku's hand froze, centimeters from his goal. He had failed. Silence descended on the training ground. Kiba and Hinata looked devastated. Izuku's shoulders slumped. Kakashi slowly turned around. He looked at the kunai Izuku had thrown, now stuck in a tree. The paper tags were blank. They were duds. It was a feint. A brilliant, risky feint that had forced him to choose between the mission's objective and his comrades' lives. He looked at the 3 of them, standing together, defeated but united. Kiba was bruised, Hinata was emotionally drained, and Izuku was panting from exertion. A slow smile formed under his mask. You failed to get the bells, he said. So you all failed the test. Their faces fell. But, Kakashi continued, his eye curving into a happy crescent. You pass as a team. You realize that the mission's success was secondary to the survival of your comrades. You put the team before the individual. He looked at Izuku. You were willing to lead. He looked at Kiba. You were willing to be a decoy. He looked at Hinata, and you were the irreplaceable support that made it all possible. He walked over to the memorial stone, a large black monolith engraved with the names of fallen heroes. In the shinobi world, he said softly, those who break the rules are scum. That's true. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He turned back to them. Team 8. No, let's call it Team 7 for old time's sake. Your first mission starts tomorrow. A wave of joyous relief washed over them. Kiba, for the first time, looked at Izuku not with disdain, but with a grudging respect. Humph. Not a bad plan for a Deku. As they were celebrating, Hinata shyly approached Izuku. Midoriya-kun, she began, her voice barely a whisper. When you were moving during the test, I was watching you with my Byakugan. Izuku froze. Your chakra, she continued, her pale eyes wide with wonder and confusion. It's not like anyone else's. It's not a calm blue network. It's like a raging storm. A vortex of brilliant green lightning, and inside it, there were other colors. Swirling. Like a rainbow caught in a hurricane. I've never seen anything like it. Izuku's blood ran cold. His secret. His impossible, world-altering secret. It wasn't a secret at all. From the very first day, someone could see it. Someone could see the ghosts inside him. The novelty of being a real, official Konoha genin lasted for approximately 1 week. It was a week filled with D-rank missions that were less the stuff of legend and more the stuff of glorified chores. They pulled weeds for the formidable Tora's wife, painted fences until their fingers were numb, and chased the infamous demon cat itself through the winding streets of the village. A mission that left Kiba covered in scratches and Deku's notebook filled with a surprisingly detailed analysis of feline agility and evasion tactics. Through it all, their team dynamic began to solidify into a strange, grudging equilibrium. Kiba, having seen Deku's strategic mind in action, had dialed back his open hostility to a more manageable level of sarcastic condescension. Hinata, feeling validated and seen for the first time, spoke in sentences that were occasionally longer than 3 words, her Byakugan often providing invaluable, if shyly delivered, reconnaissance. And Izuku, buoyed by his acceptance, felt a fragile confidence begin to bloom. Yet, a cold dread coiled in the pit of his stomach. He was a fraud. A genin whose passing grade was earned on a burst of power so dangerous, so uncontrollable, that the memory of his shattered arms still sent phantom pains through his limb on cold mornings. He had a god sleeping inside him, and he was terrified to wake it. Every day was a balancing act, performing well enough to seem competent, but never daring to tap into the emerald storm that raged just beneath his skin. Their first C-rank mission was announced on a bright, sunny morning. They were to escort a master bridge builder, a man named Tazuna, back to his home in the land of waves. Finally! A real mission! Kiba had cheered, punching the air. Guarding some old man. There might be bandits. Or ninjas. Now, Kiba, Kakashi said, his visible eye crinkling in amusement. It's C-rank. There won't be any shinobi combat. It's a simple protection detail. Tazuna, a grizzled man with a towel wrapped around his head and a bottle of sake dangling from his fingers, sized them up with a disdainful sniff. He pointed a crooked finger at the 3 genin. These are the brats supposed to protect me? They look like they'd lose a fight with a wet noodle. Especially that one. His finger landed on Izuku, the shortest, and, despite his 10 months of hellish training, still the least imposing of the 3. The runt with the notebook looks like he's about to cry. Izuku flinched as if struck. The fragile confidence he'd been nurturing withered under the old man's dismissive glare. Kiba bristled, about to launch into a tirade about his elite clan, but a look from Kakashi silenced him. The journey began. The path out of Konoha was wide and peaceful, flanked by lush forests and chirping birds. For a while, the simple act of walking into the world beyond the village walls was an adventure in itself. Izuku, ever the student, diligently took notes on the geography, the flora, and the patrol patterns of the Konoha guards they passed. It was a coping mechanism, a way to channel his anxiety into the familiar comfort of analysis. I'm a genin, he told himself, the cool metal of his forehead protector a constant reminder. I'm part of a team. Kakashi-sensei is here. Everything is fine. But the lie was thin. He could feel one for all humming beneath his skin, a low-level thrum of immense, terrifying potential. It felt like walking around with a live paper bomb strapped to his chest, knowing that the slightest misstep could set it off and destroy everything. 2 hours into their journey, Izuku's hyper-awareness, a trait honed by a lifetime of being the weakest person in the room, noticed something wrong. The sun was high and hot, beating down on the dirt road. Yet nestled in a dip in the road ahead was a large puddle. It hadn't rained in days. His heart began to hammer. An anomaly. In the field, any anomaly is a potential threat. Basic academy knowledge. But what if it's just a puddle? If I say something, they'll all look at me like I'm an idiot. Kiba will call me a coward. Tazuna will laugh. He hesitated, his throat suddenly dry. The fear of looking foolish warred with the instinct screaming that something was wrong. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, shamefaced. He felt a hand on his head. Good eye, Izuku, Kakashi said quietly, not breaking his stride. His voice was soft, meant only for him. You were right to be suspicious. Stay alert. A wave of warmth and relief washed over Izuku. He wasn't being foolish. His sensei had seen his hesitation, understood it, and validated his instincts. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. As they passed the puddle, 2 figures erupted from the water in a blur of motion. They were shinobi, wearing the flak jackets and breathing masks of Kirigakure, their foreheads bearing the slashed symbol of missing nin. A long, spiked chain shot out, wrapping around Kakashi in an instant. One down! One of them hissed. They pulled the chain taut. Kakashi's body was ripped to shreds. Izuku's blood ran cold. His mind went blank, all thought erased by a tidal wave of pure, paralyzing terror. Sensei, he's... The 2 rogue ninja were on them in a flash, moving with a speed that made Izuku's D-rank missions feel like a pleasant stroll. One charged Kiba, the other came straight for Tazuna, with Hinata and Izuku standing in the way. Time slowed to a crawl. Izuku saw the glint of the poisoned gauntlet, the cruel sneer on the ninja's face. He knew he should move. He knew he should draw a kunai, use a substitution, do something, but his body wouldn't obey. His feet were rooted to the ground. The sleeping giant of One for All felt 1,000,000 miles away, locked behind a door of sheer panic. He was useless. He was a Deku. Suddenly, a silver flash. Kakashi was there, appearing as if from thin air, holding the 2 missing nin by the scruffs of their necks as if they were unruly kittens. The shredded body, behind them, dissolved into splintered wood. A substitution jutsu. Of course. Well now, Kakashi said, his voice dangerously calm. To think the demon brothers of the mist would be working as common highwaymen. He applied a bit of pressure, and the 2 shinobi slumped unconscious. The fight was over before Izuku had even managed to draw a breath. He stood there, trembling, his hand still hovering over his weapon pouch. He had done nothing. Absolutely nothing. He hadn't even flinched in a useful direction. Heh! Some shinobi. Tazuna grumbled, though his face was pale. The runt almost wet himself. Kiba, who had at least managed to get into a fighting stance, scoffed. See? What did I tell you? Useless in a real fight. Good thing Kakashi-sensei was just faking it. The words were barbs, but the worst criticism came from within. They're right. I froze. All that training, all that power, and when it mattered I was just a scared kid. What good is a hero who can't move? Shame burned in his gut, hot and acidic. Kakashi turned to Tazuna, his single eye narrowed. There are ninja assassins after you. This is no longer a C-rank mission. This is A-rank, possibly higher. We should return to the village. Tazuna's face crumpled. He told them everything, about the shipping magnate Gato, who had taken over the land of waves, and how the bridge was their only hope for freedom. He couldn't afford a higher-ranked mission, and if they left, he was a dead man, and his country would starve. Izuku listened, his own shame momentarily forgotten. He saw the desperation in the old man's eyes, heard the plea for his people. This was what heroes did. They protected people like Tazuna. It was the entire reason he'd endured Tashinori's hellish training. After a moment of deliberation, and seeing the determined looks on his students' faces, Kakashi sighed. Mission continues. The air grew heavy and cold as they took a boat through the thick mist toward the land of waves. The oppressive atmosphere was a perfect match for Izuku's mood. He felt the weight of his failure pressing down on him, suffocating him. They hadn't been on solid ground for more than 20 minutes when it happened. Duck! Kakashi yelled. A massive blade, so large it looked more like an executioner's block than a sword, spun through the air, embedding itself in a tree with a thunderous thud. A man stood perched on the hilt, his face covered in bandages, his muscular frame radiating an aura of pure menace. Well, the man's voice was deep and gravelly. If it isn't Kakashi of the Sharingan. Sorry, but the old man is mine. Izuku's mind supplied the information instantly, pulled from a bingo book he'd memorized. Zabuza Momochi. The demon of the hidden mist. One of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Master of silent killing. A rank. No S-rank threat. This wasn't the Demon Brothers. This was a monster. A legend. Everyone, protect Tazuna! Kakashi ordered, his voice deadly serious. He slowly lifted his headband, revealing the eye beneath. It was a spinning vortex of red and black, a 3-tomo Sharingan that seemed to drink the light. You're in my way. Get back! The pressure in the air intensified tenfold. It was Zabuza's killing intent, a tangible force that promised a painful, bloody death. It was an ice-cold hand gripping Izuku's heart and squeezing. It was 1,000 times worse than the Demon Brothers. He could barely breathe. Kiba was trembling, and even Hinata looked ready to collapse. So I get to see the famous Sharingan. Zabuza mused. An honor. The fight was a blur of speed and power that made Izuku's head spin. Zabuza used his hidden mist jutsu, and the world vanished into a white void. Izuku's analytical brain, his only defense against the paralyzing fear, kicked into overdrive. He's nullifying Kakashi's visual prowess, using the mist to mask his movements. Silent killing. He'll come from anywhere. Kakashi gathered the 3 genin and Tazuna into a tight circle. Stay calm. He'll come for me first. Zabuza's voice echoed from all around them. 8 points. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Which will be my target? The sheer terror of it was a physical assault. But this time, something was different. Izuku, remembering his earlier failure, forced his body to move. He gripped his kunai, his knuckles white. He would not freeze again. He could not freeze again. The clash came. Kakashi managed to counter Zabuza's initial assault, but the demon of the mist was relentless. Water clones surged from the lake, and the clang of steel on steel rang through the mist. Izuku, Kiba, and Hinata did their best to fend off the clones that came for Tazuna, their teamwork from the bell test serving them well. But they were out of their league. Zabuza, seeing an opening, feinted at Kakashi and then launched a massive water dragon at the group protecting the bridge builder. It was a feint within a feint. Kakashi, realizing the genin couldn't possibly stop it, moved. He appeared in front of them, using his own water dragon jutsu to counter. The 2 colossal beasts of water and chakra collided with an explosive roar. But Zabuza had anticipated it. As Kakashi was locked in the jutsu, the real Zabuza flickered behind him, his massive executioner's blade swinging in a deadly arc. Kakashi couldn't dodge in time. He managed to twist his body, avoiding a fatal blow, but the jagged edge of the massive sword raked across his side, tearing through his flak jacket and slicing a deep, bloody gash across his ribs. Kakashi cried out, a sharp intake of breath, and stumbled back, clutching his side. Blood, dark and stark against his green vest, welled between his fingers. Izuku stared, horrified. His sensei. The invincible copy ninja. The man who had handled the Demon Brothers without breaking a sweat. He was bleeding. He was hurt. Because of them. because of their mission. The sight broke through Izuku's fear. It wasn't about him being a hero anymore. It was about his sensei, his leader, being in mortal danger right in front of him. Seeing his advantage, Zabuza pressed his attack. But Kakashi, even injured, was still Kakashi of the Sharingan. With a burst of chakra and a clever substitution, he managed to trap Zabuza in a cage of water. It was a temporary solution, and one that rooted Kakashi to the spot. "Listen to me," Kakashi grunted, his face pale with pain and exertion. "This prison won't hold him forever. Take Tizuna and run." "That's an order." But just as he said it, a pair of saban needles flew from the trees, embedding themselves in Zabuza's neck. The massive shinobi stiffened and collapsed. A new figure appeared on a branch, a slender youth in a Kiri Hunter-nin mask. "You were right." The Hunter-nin's voice was light and melodic. "He was my target. Thank you for your assistance." The Hunter-nin checked Zabuza's pulse. "He is dead." He then vanished in a swirl of leaves, taking Zabuza's body with him. The crisis was over. But as the adrenaline faded, Kakashi swayed and collapsed, his injury and chakra exhaustion finally catching up to him. They carried their sensei to Tizuna's house, a humble wooden structure filled with the warmth of family. Tizuna's daughter, Tsunami, tended to Kakashi's wound while her son, Inari, watched with wide, resentful eyes. Later that afternoon, while Kakashi rested, Izuku slipped out of the house. The weight on his shoulders was immense. He had failed again. He hadn't frozen, but he had been utterly ineffective. His sensei was injured, and their mission was a lie built on a foundation of death and poverty. He felt weak, pathetic. He found a secluded clearing in the woods behind the house and began to practice. Not with one for all, the thought was too terrifying. He just went through the basic taijutsu katas, his movements stiff and clumsy, his mind a maelstrom of self-doubt. He did push-ups until his arms burned, sit-ups until his abs cramped. He was trying to punish his body for his own weakness, trying to physically exhaust the feeling of uselessness out of his system. "You train very hard." The voice was soft, feminine, and startlingly close. Izuku leaped to his feet, spinning around to see a young person standing by the edge of the clearing. They were slender and beautiful, with long dark hair and a gentle face, dressed in a simple pink kimono. He was collecting medicinal herbs in a small basket. "Oh, I am sorry I didn't see you there," Izuku stammered. "It's all right," the youth said with a kind smile. "I was just wondering. Why do you train so hard? You push yourself as if you are trying to outrun something." The observation was so perceptive it caught Izuku off guard. I want to be a hero," he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "A hero?" The youth tilted their head. "What does that mean?" "It means being strong enough to protect everyone," Izuku said, thinking of the fourth Hokage, of All Might. "It means saving people with a smile, so they know everything is going to be okay." "That is a noble goal," the person said, their voice thoughtful. "But is it possible to protect everyone?" "Perhaps true strength is not found in wanting to protect the whole world, but in finding one person, just one person, who is precious to you. Someone you would do anything for." The youth's eyes seemed to look at something far away. "I believe that when you have someone you truly want to protect, that is when you can become strong. Truly strong. Your reason for fighting becomes your weapon." The words struck Izuku with the force of a physical blow. He had been so focused on the grand, abstract idea of being a hero, a symbol. He thought about his own motivations. He wanted to be like the fourth Hokage, yes. But why? He thought of the terror on Konohamaru's face. He thought of Kiba's bravado hiding his fear. He thought of Hinata's quiet strength. He thought of Kakashi, bleeding in the mist to protect them, his precious people. He wasn't fighting for a symbol. He was fighting for them. The abstract goal suddenly became intensely personal, intensely real. He didn't need to be the fourth Hokage right now. He just needed to be strong enough to keep his team, his friends, from getting hurt. "Do you have someone like that?" Izuku asked. The beautiful youth smiled, a sad, gentle expression. "Yes. I do. He is the one who gave my life purpose. To live and fight for him is my dream." They stood up, their basket full. "I hope you find your strength, Hiro-san." With another kind smile, The youth turned and walked away, disappearing into the woods as quietly as they had arrived. Izuku stood there, his mind reeling. A reason for fighting. A precious person. The simple idea had recontextualized his entire struggle. The raging storm of one for all inside him no longer felt like a curse. It felt like a tool, a dangerous, terrifying tool, but one that could be used for a singular, noble purpose, to protect his friends. A week later, Kakashi was back on his feet, albeit on crutches. He revealed his suspicion: Zabuza was still alive. The hunter Nin was his accomplice, and the Saban needles had just put him in a death-like state. They would be back. The team spent the week training, honing their teamwork, and, at Kakashi's insistence, learning to climb trees using chakra. Izuku, with his pathetic chakra reserves, struggled immensely, but by channeling the memory of his physical training with Toshinori, he managed it through sheer grit and creative problem-solving, much to his teammates' surprise. The day Zabuza returned was foggy and tense. They stood on the half-finished bridge, a monument to hope and defiance, waiting for the inevitable. When the mist rolled in, thicker and more oppressive than before, they knew it was time. Zabuza appeared, the bandaged man now flanked by the masked hunter Nin from the forest. The youth Izuku had met. Haku. It seems my little ruse has been found out, Kakashi, Zabuza said. No matter. This time, I'll finish the job. Izuku, Kiba, Hinata, you handled the masked one, Kakashi ordered, his Sharingan already spinning. He's my level. Don't face him alone. Work together. I'll take Zabuza. The battle began. Kakashi and Zabuza were a storm of steel and water jutsu. The three genin squared off against Haku. I don't want to kill you, Haku said, his voice the same melodic tone Izuku remembered. But if you stand in Zabuza-sama's way, I will have no choice. Kiba, ever reckless, charged first. We'll see about that. Haku moved like a phantom. He effortlessly dodged Kiba's attack and appeared in the center of the three genin. Secret jutsu, demonic mirroring ice crystals. The temperature plummeted. Shimmering, crystalline mirrors of ice erupted from the ground, forming a dome around them, trapping them with Haku. Haku's reflection appeared in every single mirror. Now let's begin. Haku's voice echoed from all directions. It was a slaughter. Haku moved between the mirrors at impossible speeds, a blur of motion that even Hinata's Byakugan struggled to track. He pelted them with Saban needles, striking non-vital points, slowly but surely wearing them down. Kiba's ferocious attacks hit nothing but reflections, leaving him open to counterattacks that left him bruised and bleeding. Hinata could see the real Haku, a flicker of green chakra moving between the mirrors, but she couldn't react fast enough to warn Kiba or protect herself. They were being systematically, efficiently, and mercilessly dismantled. Izuku watched, his mind racing, but for every strategy he devised, Haku was 10 steps ahead. They were completely, utterly outclassed. He saw Kiba fall to one knee, panting, his body riddled with needles. He saw Hinata cry out as a volley struck her shoulder, forcing her to deactivate her Byakugan. They were going to die. Here on this bridge, inside this beautiful, deadly cage of ice, Haku appeared in the mirror directly in front of Kiba, his hand raised, a needle poised to strike a fatal blow. In that instant, time stopped for Izuku. He saw Kiba's wide, terrified eyes. He saw Hinata, struggling to get up, her face a mask of pain. His precious people. Haku's words echoed in his soul. When you have someone you truly want to protect, that is when you can become truly strong. The fear of his own power, the terror of his breaking bones, seemed trivial, insignificant. It was nothing compared to the gut-wrenching, soul-crushing fear of watching his friends die in front of him. I have to save them. The decision was made. He remembered Toshinori's analogy. Trying to use one for all was like microwaving an egg. His body, his arm, was the egg. But what if he didn't use the whole egg? What if he used just a tiny piece of the shell? He closed his eyes, shutting out the chaos. He reached into the raging emerald storm of one for all. He didn't try to wield the hurricane. He just dipped a finger into it. He felt the immense, terrifying power surge not through his arm, but down, 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 concentrating it into a single, infinitesimal point, the tip of his right index finger. The limb screamed in protest. The power was too dense, too volatile. Green lightning, wild and furious, crackled around his hand, but he held it. He focused it. All his fear, all his hope, all his desperation, all of it, into one single point. He opened his eyes. He saw Haku, moving in for the kill. He remembered Tashinori's booming, ridiculous, wonderful training cry. He squeezed every muscle in his body, clenched his teeth, and with a voice that was a raw, desperate roar, he yelled it from the bottom of his heart. Smash! He didn't punch. He flicked his finger. It was a tiny movement, almost comical in its simplicity. But the result was anything but. A sound like a cannon blast erupted from his fingertip. A bullet of pure, compressed air, visible as a distortion in the mist, shot across the ice dome. It wasn't a wide shockwave. It was a focused, piercing projectile. The air bullet slammed into the ice mirror directly in front of Haku. The mirror didn't crack. It didn't shatter. It disintegrated. A violent explosion of ice and mist erupted from the point of impact, the shockwave racing through the entire dome, cracking every other mirror in a spiderweb of fractures. The entire jutsu destabilized. Haku, shocked by the sudden, inexplicable destruction of his technique, leaped back, his attack on Kiba forgotten. The ice dome crumbled, falling into the water below with a great crash, freeing them. Izuku fell to one knee, panting, a single tear of agony leaking from his eye. He looked down at his right hand. His index finger was a mangled, unrecognizable ruin. It was broken in at least 3 places, grotesquely swollen, and colored a sickening shade of purple and black that was already spreading to his knuckle. The pain was sharp, nauseating, a focused point of pure misery. But his arm was fine. His body was fine, and his friends were alive. He looked up, through the pain, at the shocked face of Haku, at his stunned teammates. A grim, pained, but triumphant smile touched his lips. He had done it. He had controlled the storm. He had paid the price, and it was a price he could afford. This was his first step. This was his power. And he would break every bone in his body, one finger at a time, if it meant protecting the people precious to him. The aftermath of Izuku's desperate gambit on the bridge was a whirlwind of chaos and consequence. His finger, a mangled ruin of purpled flesh and shattered bone, throbbed with a pain so intense it made the world seem to swim at the edges. But through the haze of agony, he saw what mattered. Kiba and Hinata were safe, scrambling away from the crumbling remains of Haku's ice dome, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning awe. Haku himself stood frozen for a moment, his masked face unreadable, his composure utterly shattered by the raw, inexplicable power that had just obliterated his ultimate technique. The brief stalemate was broken by a roar from the other side of the bridge. Kakashi and Zabuza's battle raged on, a tempest of steel, water, and blood. Izuku, knowing he had bought his team only a moment's reprieve, staggered to his feet, cradling his broken hand. He had no more tricks, no more smashes he could afford. He was a one-shot weapon that had just been fired, but the confrontation with Haku never resumed. As the young hunter Nin prepared to re-engage, Zabuza let out a pained cry. Kakashi, using his Niken, his pack of ninja hounds, had finally managed to pin the demon of the mist. His fangs sunk deep into Zabuza's limbs, immobilizing him. The battle was over. Kakashi moved in, his hand crackling with the lethal energy of a Raikiri, ready to end it. In that instant, Haku made a choice. With a speed that defied logic, he appeared in a flicker of movement not in front of Izuku, but in front of Zabuza, positioning his own body directly in the path of Kakashi's attack. The sound of the Raikiri piercing flesh was sickeningly wet. Haku's body arched, a silent gasp on his lips as Kakashi's lightning-clad hand plunged through his chest. He had used himself as a human shield, fulfilling the promise he'd made to Izuku in the forest. He had become strong to protect his precious person. He had died for his dream. The emotional fallout was catastrophic. Zabuza, momentarily freed, was broken not by Kakashi's jutsu, but by the sight of Haku's sacrifice. The arrival of the shipping magnate Gato and his army of thugs, who had come to betray and kill Zabuza, only served to crystallize the moment. Gato callously kicked Haku's lifeless body, mocking the boy's loyalty. Something inside Zabuza snapped. With tears streaming from his eyes, the demon of the mist, a kunai clenched in his teeth, launched himself into Gato's mob. He was a whirlwind of death, a monster fighting not for money or power, but for the honor of the boy who had given him everything. He slaughtered dozens before succumbing to his own grievous wounds, collapsing beside the body of his loyal tool, his only friend. In his dying moments, he asked Kakashi to place him beside Haku, so he could see his face one last time. As the first snowflakes of a freak flurry began to fall, Zabuzamomochi, the demon of the mist, died with a look of peace on his face. Izuku watched it all, his own physical pain a distant echo compared to the profound, tragic weight of the scene. He saw the truth in Haku's words. He saw the awesome, terrible power of a bond forged in loyalty and love. It was a lesson far more profound than any taijutsu kata or ninjutsu theory. It was the heart of what it meant to be a shinobi, what it meant to be human. The rest of the mission was a blur. The villagers, inspired by Team 7 and Tazuna's defiance, rose up and drove off Gato's remaining thugs. The bridge was completed, a symbol of freedom named the Great Naruto Bridge, after the loud-mouthed knucklehead from another team who had apparently also played a part in inspiring Inari. As they left the land of waves, Izuku looked back at the two simple graves on the hill, marked only by Zabuza's massive blade and Haku's broken mask. He had learned more about being a hero in that 1 week than in his entire life. The return to Konoha was met with a mixture of praise and scrutiny. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, listened with rapt attention as Kakashi delivered his mission report, his gaze lingering on Izuku for a long moment. A C-rank mission spiraling into a direct confrontation with Zabuzamomochi, resulting in the deaths of 2 S-rank missing nin, was an unprecedented event for a genin team. They were lauded as heroes, but Izuku felt a deep, gnawing unease. His finger, expertly set and bandaged by a Konoha medical nin, was healing, but the memory of the power, and the cost, was branded onto his soul. He had succeeded. He had controlled it. But it was a fluke, a desperate act born of panic. What if next time he wasn't so lucky? What if he miscalculated and blew off his whole arm? Or worse, accidentally unleashed a full power smash and killed a comrade standing too close? The power was a black box. He had inherited it, he could feel its immensity, but he had no idea how it worked. He had no user's manual. That evening, he found Toshinori Yagi waiting for him at their old training ground, the now pristine clearing that had once been a junkyard. The skeletal man looked grim, his sunken eyes holding a deep concern. "Kakashi's report reached me," Toshinori said, his voice a low rasp. "A Delaware smash, you're calling it? Catchy. But reckless. You got lucky, my boy. You channeled 100% of one for all into a single point. The only reason your entire hand didn't explode was because your finger acted as a faulty release valve, blowing out before the pressure could travel further up your arm. It was a success born of desperation, not control." "I know," Izuku admitted, looking down at his bandaged hand. "But I didn't have a choice. They were going to die. I had to do something." "And you did," Toshinori acknowledged, placing a bony hand on his shoulder. "You were a hero. I am immensely proud of you. But we cannot rely on breaking your bones every time you face a strong opponent. This is not a sustainable path. You need to understand the power you wield, not just use it like a blunt instrument." "But how?" Izuku asked, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "It just feels like a storm inside me. I can't grab it, I can't shape it. I can only open the floodgates and pray I don't drown." Toshinori was silent for a long moment, staring up at the moon. "One for all is more than just a well of stockpiled energy. I told you it carries a legacy. The consciousnesses of the previous users, their wills, are imprinted upon the power itself. They are the vestiges. When you first received the power, you saw them, didn't you? The 7 shadows?" Izuku's eyes widened. "The pillars of light, in the darkness. I felt them. It was terrifying. They are the key," Toshinori explained. "I was never able to communicate with them directly. My connection was shallow. Perhaps because I was a naturally powerful individual even before receiving one for all. My own chakra might have interfered. But you were a blank slate. An empty vessel. Your unique nature might make you more receptive. You need to connect with them." You need to go to the source. Go to the source? How? Meditate, Tashinori said simply. Look inward. The first shinobi, the sage of 6 paths, was said to have gained enlightenment through meditation, connecting with the very nature of chakra itself. Your goal is more specific. Don't try to feel the world. Try to feel the storm inside you. Find its eye. Find the quiet center. And see who is waiting for you there. The idea was both thrilling and deeply intimidating. To willingly dive into that chaotic void, to face the 7 silent ghosts he had glimpsed, it was a frightening prospect. But it was also the only path forward. That night, Izuku sat in his small, sparse apartment. He assumed the standard meditation pose, just as he'd been taught in the academy for basic chakra control exercises that had always failed him. He regulated his breathing, letting the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest anchor him. He closed his eyes and looked inward. At first, there was only blackness. The familiar, frustrating sensation of his own weak chakra, a tiny, flickering candle in an infinite void. But then, he reached deeper. He didn't search for his own power. He searched for the other power. The foreign, immense, terrifying energy of one for all. He found it. It was like stepping off a cliff into a raging sea. The emerald storm roared to life in his mind's eye, a tempest of raw power that threatened to shred his consciousness. Green lightning, wild and untamed, crashed all around him. This was the power he had tried to wield. It was chaos incarnate. The eye of the storm, Tashinori's voice echoed in his memory. Find the quiet center. He fought against the current, pushing through the psychic turbulence. He focused on the memory of Haku, the memory of his friends on the bridge. He used his desire to protect them as an anchor, a lighthouse in the raging storm. He pushed deeper, past the chaotic surface, searching for something more. And then, the storm receded. The roaring winds quieted to a hum. He found himself floating in a vast, dark space, silent and starless. It was the same space he had seen during the transfer. And there, in the distance, were the 7 pillars of light, standing like colossal sentinels in the darkness. He felt a pull, a gentle but insistent summons, toward 2 of them. He drifted through the void, his heart hammering in his chest, until he came to rest before them. The pillar on the right pulsed with a soft, warm, pinkish-white light. The one on the left crackled with a volatile, almost aggressive, purple energy. As he drew closer, the light solidified, and the silhouettes within took on form and substance. The figure in the pinkish-white pillar was a woman. She had dark, spiky hair pulled back, with a single, long bang framing her face. She wore an old-style Konoha flak jacket over a simple, dark shinobi outfit. Her face was kind, etched with laugh lines around her eyes, but those eyes held a steel-like firmness, the gaze of a veteran warrior. A small mole rested under her lip. She looked at him with an expression of profound warmth and pride. "So you finally made it, little one," she said, her voice a soothing alto, yet carrying an undercurrent of immense authority. "It's good to finally meet you properly." 9th. The figure in the purple pillar was a stark contrast. He was a tall, lanky man with a wild mane of spiky, pale hair that shot up from his head. He wore a high-collared vest and had strange, segmented bracers on his forearms. His face was sharp and angular, and a cocky, almost feral, grin was plastered on his face. He looked Izuku up and down, his eyes crackling with an untamed energy. "Took you long enough, kid," the man said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "We were starting to get bored in here. Thought Toshi might have picked a dud." Izuku was speechless, utterly dumbfounded. He was talking to ghosts. Who are you?" he stammered. The woman smiled gently. "I am Nana Shimura, the 7th user of One for All, Tashinori's master. The legendary kunoichi who had fought in the Second Great Ninja War. The woman whose legacy Tashinori was trying so desperately to uphold. And I'm Daigoro Banjo." The man with the wild hair chimed in, puffing out his chest. "The 5th user, and the fastest one of the bunch, I might add." "You are not the fastest," Nana corrected him gently, without taking her eyes off Izuku. "Hey! I was plenty fast," Daigoro protested. This is real?" Izuku breathed, his mind struggling to comprehend. "You're not just echoes? We are vestiges," Nana explained. Imprints of our consciousness left behind in the core of One for All. We are both memory and awareness. We have watched you, Izuku Midoriya. We watched your lonely childhood, your tireless work, your selfless heart. We watched you on the bridge. We felt your resolve when you broke your finger to save your comrades. Her smile deepened. Tashinori chose well. You are a worthy successor. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes. To hear such praise from a legend, from his idol's own master, it was overwhelming. But being worthy isn't the same as being ready. Daigoro Banjo cut in, his expression turning serious. He pointed a finger at Izuku. That little finger flick trick was clever, kid. Real clever, but it was a parlor trick. You're treating this power like it's a single, giant club. You swing it, and things break. You, mostly, One for All is not just a single reservoir of power. Nana continued, her tone shifting to that of a sensei. Think of it as a complex chakra network in itself. Each of us who held it added not just our raw strength, but the unique nature and signature of our own chakra. Our experiences. Our techniques. My technique, for instance, Daigoro said, unable to contain his excitement. He held up his arm, and from the bracer, thick, crackling tendrils of pure black energy, shot through with purple lightning, erupted and whipped through the air like angry snakes. They were tangible, powerful, and utterly terrifying. Whoa! What is that? Izuku yelped, stumbling back. This, Daigoro said with a proud grin, is my signature jutsu. I called it Black Whip. It's born from pure raw emotion. The angrier I got, the stronger and more uncontrollable it became. It's a manifestation of rage, given form. He made the whips retract back into his arm. This power, the core of my jutsu, is now part of the stockpile. It's inside you, kid, along with the quirks of all the others. Izuku stared at his own arm, horrified and fascinated. So, I can do that? I can use Black Whip? Eventually, Nana said, her voice a note of caution. But not yet. Your body is still a fragile vessel. You barely survived channeling the core power into your finger. Trying to manifest a specific, complex ability like Black Whip right now would be like trying to perform a complex medical ninjutsu with no chakra control. You'd tear yourself apart from the inside out. She's right. Daigoro agreed, his boisterous energy fading into a grim seriousness. Each of our powers are like different elements now woven into the fabric of One for All. You need to master the basic fabric first before you can start pulling at the individual threads. If you try to force it, it'll be a catastrophe. The implication was staggering. One for All wasn't just godlike strength and speed. It was a collection of multiple Kekkei Genkai, a library of abilities waiting to be unlocked. It made the Sharingan, with its ability to copy jutsu, seem almost quaint by comparison. This was a power that didn't just copy, it absorbed and integrated. Then what do I do? Izuku asked, his mind buzzing with a million new questions. How do I control the core power without breaking myself? Nana's expression softened again. Tashinori is a wonderful man, a brilliant hero, the greatest symbol of peace this world has ever known. But his method of teaching is born from his own experience. He was already a powerhouse when he received One for All. For him, using it was like adding a booster to an already powerful engine. For you, it is like putting a dragon's heart into the body of a sparrow, she continued. You are trying to contain an explosion. That is the wrong approach. You must not contain the power, Izuku. You must become the power. Do not treat it as a foreign entity to be unleashed. You must make it a part of you, as natural as breathing. Let it flow through your entire body, not just a single limb. A small percentage spread evenly. A constant, sustained state of enhancement, not a single, devastating explosion, but a low, burning fire that warms your entire being. A low, burning fire. A sustained state. A light bulb went off in Izuku's head. He thought of the way Kakashi's Raikiri coated his whole hand, not just a single point. He thought of the gentle green glow of medical ninjutsu, a steady flow rather than a burst. A full-body enhancement, he murmured, the concept taking shape. Precisely, Nana affirmed. It will require immense concentration and control. You must feel the power in every fiber of your being, from the tips of your toes to the ends of your hair. Start small. 1%, then 2%. Find the level your body can sustain without breaking. It will be your new base. Your new normal. It's the only way you'll survive, kid, Daigoro added, his arms crossed. And you're gonna need to survive. Because there's something else you need to know. The atmosphere in the void shifted. The gentle hum of the pillars deepened into a low, ominous thrum. The darkness around them seemed to grow heavier, more oppressive. This power, Nana said, her voice losing its warmth, replaced by a cold, hard gravity. It is a light. A beacon. And the stronger it shines, the more attention it draws from the shadows, especially from one particular shadow. All for one, Izuku whispered, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. Tashinori defeated him, Nana confirmed. But a being like that, a monster who has lived for centuries by stealing the life force and abilities of others, does not die so easily. His body may be broken, his empire shattered, but his will, his consciousness, endures. He is a parasite looking for a new host, a phantom reaching from beyond the grave. Daigoro's expression was grim. And he is not the only shadow. The world is filled with those who covet power. Orochimaru of the Sannin, a man who seeks immortality and collects jutsu like their trading cards. The Akatsuki, a mysterious organization hunting the tailed beasts, reservoirs of immense chakra. They are all drawn to unique and powerful Kekkei Genkai. And you, ninth, now possess the most unique and powerful of them all. As you grow stronger, as you master one for all, its light will shine brighter. Nana warned, her gaze piercing him. You will become a target. The collector will sense his stolen power, the one Kekkei Genkai he could never truly conquer, burning brightly in a new vessel. He, or his agents, will come for you. They will try to take it back, to extinguish the torch of hope we have passed down for generations. She reached out, her hand glowing with a soft light. She couldn't touch him, but he could feel the warmth, the fierce, protective will of a grandmother shielding her grandchild. You must be ready, Izuku Midoriya. You must grow strong, not just for your own dream, but for the sake of the world. You are not just a hero in training. You are a soldier in a secret, ancient war. You are the symbol of a new generation. The pull of the waking world began to tug at his consciousness. The pillars of light started to fade, the voices of Nana and Daigoro growing distant. Wait! Izuku cried out. I have so many more questions. Master the flow, kid! Become the power! Daigoro's voice echoed. We will always be here, ninth. Nana's voice was the last thing he heard, a soothing promise in the fading darkness. You are not alone. Izuku's eyes snapped open. He was back in his apartment, the first rays of dawn painting his room in shades of gray and orange. His body was drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. The meditation had felt like it lasted a lifetime, but only a few hours had passed. He looked at his hands, his mind reeling from the revelations. Black Whip? The other vestiges. The warning about all for one. And the key to it all. A sustained, full-body flow. He stood up, his legs steady. He walked to the center of his room and took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and reached for the storm. But this time, he didn't try to unleash it. He remembered Nana's words. He pictured a gentle stream, not a raging flood. He tried to draw just a tiny trickle of one for all and spread it, not to one limb, but everywhere. He focused. He pictured the power as water, flowing from his heart, down his arms to his fingertips, down his torso, into his legs and feet. A circuit. A complete, unbroken flow. He felt a tingle. A faint, green static crackled over his skin, and he immediately felt his muscles tense, his bones creak in protest. It was too much. He pulled back, panting, the feeling vanishing. He tried again. This time, even less. A whisper of power. A single drop of water into the stream of his own chakra. He felt the tingle again, fainter this time. The green static was almost invisible. His muscles were tight, humming with a strange energy, but they weren't screaming. His bones weren't threatening to break. He held it. 1 second. 2 seconds. He felt a profound sense of connection to his own body. He could feel the power buzzing in his calf muscle, the thrum of it in his earlobes. It was everywhere. He opened his eyes. A faint, emerald aura, like a heat haze, shimmered around his entire body. Green lightning, thin as spider silk, danced across his skin. He felt faster, stronger, more alive than he had ever felt in his life. He wasn't a cannon anymore. He was a finely tuned weapon. He had done it. This was the first step. He looked at his reflection in the dark windowpane. His eyes were glowing with a soft, green light, and his body was wreathed in a gentle storm. This, he decided, was his new path. His new technique. He would call it full cowl.